Every child in the world learns the same story. 1492, Columbus, 3 ships, the New World discovered. End of story. What if that story was not just incomplete, but actively constructed to erase what came before it? Because in the year 889 AD, 600 years before Columbus was born, an Arab navigator from Cordoba sailed west from the same port Columbus would later use, crossed the Atlantic, and returned with what his historian described as fabulous treasures from an unknown land. His name was Khashkhash ibn Saeed ibn Aswad, and history barely remembers him. He was not the only one. There was a Muslim scholar who deduced the existence of the American continent from pure mathematics, from his desk, 455 years before Columbus set sail. There was a West African king who sent 2,000 ships into the Atlantic and never came back. And there was a map drawn by a Turkish admiral in 1513 that shows the coastline of the Americas in impossible detail, using source maps that predate Columbus by centuries. This is not conspiracy theory. This is history, the kind that doesn't fit the story someone decided to tell. The story of Christopher Columbus discovering America has 2 fundamental problems. The first, there were already between 50 and 100 million people living there when he arrived. You cannot discover a place where people already live. The second, Columbus wasn't even first among the Europeans. The Norse explorer Leif Erikson reached North America around 1000 AD, nearly 5 centuries before Columbus. Columbus Day, a federal holiday in the United States, celebrates a man who died believing he had reached Asia, never understood he had reached a continent new to him, and whose arrival triggered one of the largest genocides in human history.
And in that legal argument, everyone who came before him, Norse, Muslim, African, was quietly erased. In 889 AD, during the rule of Caliph Abdullah ibn Muhammad of Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, a navigator named Khashkhash ibn Saeed ibn Aswad prepared a fleet of ships at the port of Delba. This is the modern city of Palos de la Frontera, the exact port from which Columbus would sail 603 years later. Is Ard Majhoola the Americas? We cannot prove it with certainty. What we can prove is that a Muslim navigator left from Spain, crossed the Atlantic, reached somewhere, returned with something extraordinary. And this was considered significant enough to be recorded by one of the greatest historians of the medieval world. We accept the Norse voyages on similar evidence. The standard is different when the explorer is Muslim. Now, for the most extraordinary mind in this story. Abu Rayhan al-Biruni was a Persian scholar born in 973 AD in what is now Uzbekistan. He spoke 6 languages, mastered astronomy, mathematics, geography, geology, and pharmacology simultaneously, and measured the circumference of the Earth to within 10 miles of the correct answer, without leaving his region. In 1037 AD, working from pure mathematical reasoning, al-Biruni concluded something that no one in the European world would dare suggest for another 4 centuries. Europe, Africa, and Asia, the entire known world, only accounted for 2/5 of the Earth's surface. The other 3/5 had to be something, either ocean or land. This is the story Mansa Musa told in Cairo in 1324, not about himself, about his predecessor. The ruler before Mansa Musa, Abu Bakr II, one of the greatest kings of the Mali
Empire, became obsessed with one question. What was on the other side of the Atlantic? The ocean that his navigators could see from the West African coast. The ocean that nobody had returned from. Abu Bakr was so determined to lead the expedition himself that he abdicated the throne gave up the rule of the richest empire on earth to sail into the unknown. He was never seen again. Some historians have proposed that survivors of the Mali expeditions reached Central or South America, pointing to similarities in architectural styles, cotton cultivation techniques, and linguistic parallels between West African languages and certain indigenous American words. This evidence is intriguing, but not conclusive. The story of Abu Bakr II is recorded fact. What happened after the ship sailed west? That remains the ocean's secret. In 1929, a team of scholars examining old documents in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul found something that should not have existed. A map drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis, using, according to his own notes, 20 source maps, including 8 from the time of Alexander the Great, Arab navigation charts, and a map attributed to Columbus. The map is not perfect. Some features are distorted, some coastlines unexplained. Scholars continue to debate exactly what it shows and where the source knowledge came from. But the map exists. It is in Istanbul. It was drawn 21 years after Columbus and uses sources that, by the compiler's own admission, predate him. The knowledge of the American coastline was circulating in the Islamic world before Columbus made it to Spain's court.
Here is the detail that most historians acknowledge, but almost nobody talks about. When Columbus made his first voyage in 1492, he was accompanied by several Andalusian Moorish sailors, Muslims from Islamic Spain, who had navigational knowledge of the Atlantic that Columbus himself did not possess. His chief navigator, a man named Pedro Alonso Niño, is believed by some historians to have been of African Muslim heritage. Columbus did not discover America. He was guided to it by maps drawn from knowledge that came, in significant part, from the very civilization history decided to erase. Why don't we know this story? The answer is not subtle. In 1492, the same year Columbus sailed, Spain completed the Reconquista, the 8th century campaign to expel Muslims and Jews from the Iberian Peninsula. The same year Columbus was given ships, Muslims were being expelled from the country. The same year America was discovered, the civilization that had preserved and advanced European knowledge for centuries was being systematically erased from Spanish history. The story of Columbus discovering America is not just historically inaccurate. It was made possible by the destruction of the records that would have told a different story. You cannot erase what was never written down, but you can burn what was. Khashkhash ibn Saeed sailed west in 889 AD, and history shrugged. Al-Biruni calculated a continent into existence in 1037 and was given a footnote. Abu Bakr II abdicated the richest throne on earth and sailed into the Atlantic in 1311 and never came back. The Piri Reis map sits in Istanbul, showing coastlines that shouldn't be there, and most people have never heard of it. We are not saying Columbus never crossed the Atlantic. He did. We are not saying the Islamic voyages are proven beyond doubt. Some aren't. What we are saying is that the standard of evidence required to accept these stories is applied differently based on who is telling them. The Norse get Leif Erikson Day. Columbus gets a federal holiday. Khashkhash ibn Saeed gets silence. History is not just what happened. It is what survives being burned.
If this made you question something you were taught, subscribe, because we build this channel on the histories that survived being erased. Drop a comment. Which of these stories do you think deserves to be taught in schools? Because right now, none of them are.